Hello everyone, and welcome to the walkthrough for my budget template. This video will serve as an example reference point to help anybody that has purchased this template and show you exactly how to use it. And it can also be used as an introduction video if you're interested in the template and you want to know what it's about before you go ahead and purchase it. This will hopefully be another helpful source. So the first thing that you will see once you purchase this template is that you will be brought to this instructions page. It gives you all of my social sites if you're interested in my website, my YouTube, my TikTok, my Instagram. I also have my email here, so if you have any questions or you would need help within the template, please feel free to go ahead and email me and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. Within the table of contents here, we have the video tutorial, which is exactly what you're watching now to help you with setting up this template. And then I also provided the playlist for my monthly budget with me's. Within this playlist, I am setting up my budget each month with this template. So if you want another example of real life and how it's meant to be used, you can watch those videos for reference as well. But the main thing that is important within this instructions page is to highlight the how to access your file. If you were not automatically directed to make a copy of your template, please be sure to make a copy so that you are able to edit and input your numbers. If you find that you have opened the template and you are not able to enter any numbers, that is because you were directed to the master file and you are not able to make edits within that master file. So please just be sure to make a copy. I've listed the step-by-step process of how to do so right here, and then you'll be able to get started with entering your information for your template. So looking at our templates in terms of the tabs that we have available, we see here we have an annual dashboard tab, we have a savings tracker tab, a calendar tab, and then we have our monthly tab, which are listed January all the way through December, and they are all the same. So we will be going through each tab just to show you how they work and what they are meant for. And I think it would be beneficial to start with the monthly tab because these tabs really do drive majority of the reports. So again, all of the months are exactly the same. So I'm just going to go through January and it will be the same process for all of the other months. The first thing that I would like to highlight that I think we should all keep in mind is that when creating this file, the thought process was that if a cell is white, that is something that you would enter yourself. So it's either something you hard key or a number that you would input. However, if a cell is gray or has a different color other than white, most likely that cell has a formula entered. Another way to know if a cell has a formula is that, say if I try to input something over a cell with a formula that is not white, you will get this pop-up screen. This pop-up screen is to let you know that, hey, you're about to make a change to a cell that has a formula in it. So you can update it if you want to, and you would hit OK. However, I would advise against that and I would hit cancel because changing this cell's formula may affect another part of the template. So that is why I locked these cells so that you wouldn't make changes to them and then this pop-up would let you know not to do so. But again, if you want to, it's your template and you can choose to do so, but just be mindful that if you do, it can affect your template in other areas. So I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel. So getting started with how we can look at the monthly tab, up at the top we have January, which will be whatever month that we are speaking to. And the first thing that you will see that you are able to edit are the start and end dates. If you double click within the cell, you will get a pop-up of a calendar view, and you can pick and choose what dates you want to be reflective within your January budget. So if you are paid bi-weekly and you want your January budget to end on whatever day is your last paycheck that you choose to close, you can do so. I find that these start dates would be very helpful for people who are paid on, say, example, the 15th or the 30th, because sometimes their paychecks can pay for different things within the month. So example, you can use your January paycheck to pay for your February bills, and you can set it up exactly how you need to. For this example, I'm just going to go ahead and leave them as they are. The next thing that I'll go ahead and speak to is this income section. Here we see is white, so that is something for us to input. So income source is noted as anything that you want to list in terms of you bringing money in. I gave an option of 10 spaces that you can input. For this example, let's say we have a husband and wife. So we have Mary's pay and we have Bill's pay, and you can call it whatever you want. And for the budgeted column, let's say Mary is bringing in $3,000 for the month and Bill is bringing in $4,000 for the month. So looking down at the total section, we see it's already rolled up to $7,000 that we are budgeting with. And if we look here in these boxes, we see that our total of $7,000 for income that we have to budget has been populated as well. So for this box over here, it does reference the income that you type in. And as you put in your bills and your expenses, you will see this number be deducted to let you know how much you have remaining to budget. So this template is read as a budget versus actual type of setup. So you will see you will have columns that reference your budgeted amount, which you will list at the beginning of the month, and then your actualized numbers, which will come in at the end, so we know exactly how we did. So let's just go ahead and fill in this template as if we are budgeting at the start of the month. And I will go ahead and enter some bills that we can use as examples. All right, so I just went ahead and listed a few bills just as an example. I have a date column, so you can go ahead and write what date these bills will be due on. I wrote the example of rent as a bill and then the budgeted amount at $2,500. So if we look at the bottom of this, we see currently the total for our bills is rolling to $2,930. And we see that that amount has also been deducted from our remaining to budget up at the top. So to be clear, this template does feed off of 5 categories. So we have a bills section, we have an expenses section, savings, investments, and debt. So those are the 5 sections that drive this template, and you can just input those related to how they fall within your budget. I'm going to go ahead and finish inputting some other things within our expenses, savings, and investments just to get an overall picture. All right, so I've inputted all of our examples. We see that our remaining to budget is now left at 0, and this little pie chart has been completely filled in to pink to let us know that everything has been accounted for. I like to do a zero-based budget, so if that is also something that you like to do, you can roll it down to 0, but if you are comfortable with a leftover amount or a rollover amount, whatever you choose to remain can be that as well. So in terms of expenses, I went ahead and listed some for us. We have gas, groceries, spending, and toiletries, and then entered some amounts of what we're going to budget for the month. For savings, we have, example, a new car, a house down payment, an emergency fund. For investments, we have Roth IRA that we're budgeting at $200, and then we have a student loan payment in terms of debt that will be due on the 23rd, and we're budgeting $270 for that. So if you noticed, as I was entering these numbers in, this pie chart as well as this one began to auto-populate with some data. Up at the top, this budget income breakdown is again referencing your budgeted amount of how your 5 categories are going to roll up in terms of a percentage. So looking at this pie chart for bills, we're looking at 41.9%, expenses 18%, savings with 32%, debt with 3.9%. So it just offers another visual to let you know exactly how your money is working and if you're comfortable with where they're at. This data is going to show a bar graph that's going to be your budgeted versus your actual and where they look in terms of that. And then these 2 boxes over here, we see that they are currently empty, but if you read the titles, they are referencing our actual income. So this will be your actual income breakdown and your savings breakdown based off of your actual income. So there's nothing to auto-populate within these boxes because we have not inputted anything for our actual. So another thing that we can look at over here is the income summary. We also see that this has been auto-populated. These are formulas as well, so there's nothing for us to input. And this, again, is just a total breakdown of where everything rolls up. So for your bills, you can see they rolled up to a total of $2,930, expenses $1,300, savings $2,300, and so forth, so on. and it lets you know again how much is left over. So that's an example of how you do budgeted income. Pretty simple, and the actual income is exactly the same. You will just input your numbers based off of what actually came in. The only thing you need to keep in mind in terms of your actual input is make sure that you filter down to this one that now reads remaining to actual, so that then these numbers will be reflective of now your actual inputs. So let's say it's the end of the month and we want to come in and budget and quote how much Mary came in, and let's say she came in 3,500 versus her 3,000. So we see now that we filtered on remaining the actual, the number has now been updated to what is our actual number, and we can also see the difference between Mary's pay and what was budgeted. So that was a positive income growth of $500. And the same thing can be said for Bill. If we say Bill actually came in at $3,000, we see now that this remaining actual has been updated. So just always be mindful to filter on the correct method that you are budgeting when you are looking at the template. So again, actual is the same as budgeted. You will go ahead and fill in these numbers, and it will decrease as you input, and then your pie chart will fill in as well. So I'll just go ahead and input some numbers so that then we can get a better visual. All right, so we went ahead and inputted the data, and we see that we are now back to 0 and our pie chart is completely filled in. So we have accounted for every dollar. Looking at the income summary, we see now that we have actual numbers, and then this difference column is the difference of what you budgeted versus what you actualized at. So in terms of income, if you budgeted less than what you expected, the number will be shown as red and you will see a negative sign. For bills, if you budgeted more than what you expected, the number will read as red and it will be positive, because ideally we want to keep our bills as low as we can. The same thought process is for expenses. So here we see that expenses is lower than what we thought it was going to be. So that is a positive green because we were able to do less spending than what we thought. As for savings, if we put in less than what we budgeted, it will be a red. And then for investments, it's the same thing. If we are less than what we budgeted, it will read as red and give us a negative. Looking at debt, we actualize more than what we budgeted, so that will showcase as green, and that will be a positive. And then looking back at these boxes, now that we have actual income, we can go ahead and see that these boxes are now filled in. So this actual income pie chart is the same as the budgeted income, but you can see the difference. So in this example, our bills are clearly more than what we budgeted, and that is something that we can work on if that's a budget category that we want to focus on. And then for the savings breakdown, it's referencing this savings column over here. So we currently have 3 savings that we are prioritizing. We have new car, the house down payment, and the emergency fund. And then this pie chart will show you based off a percentage of who got the most. So clearly we see house payment is the largest portion for the month at 58%. So that is the top portion of the monthly breakdown. And if we scroll to the bottom, we see here we have the expense tracker. If we want to track our expenses throughout the month, that is what this expense tracker is for. So in terms of expense tracker and the categories that we are tracking, this section will always look up to these expenses listed here. So if a category is something that you want to track your spending within, be sure that you list it within this expense column, because anything that you write here is what will be brought down here. So the way I fill this out is you can say the date. So say we bought something on January 3rd. After that, we can go ahead and list the transaction. So let's say I went to Walmart, for example, and the categories, as I said, these will auto-populate based off of whatever you inputted at the top. So let's say I went grocery shopping and the amount I spent there was $100. You'll see that a graph will begin to form, and this graph is going to show all of your expenses based off of the categories that you inputted and the percent that you spent them on. I'm going to go ahead and fill in some more examples just so that we can get more to see. All right, so I went ahead and inputted some more examples just so that we can have some more data that we are working with. And we see here that our chart is now showing with more items. So here you can clearly see for the month, if this is how I was wrapping it up, that 41% of my money was spent on toiletries and 20% was spent on groceries. So if you want to get a better idea of your variable expenses and how much that is equating to your budget, you can see that as well. Down here, since these are all in gray, These are formulas that will auto-populate, but it will show you a running total for the month of your categories and where they came. So gas for the month, I can quickly see that I spent $50, groceries $100, spending $120, so on and so forth. And you can list as many categories as I have available here. Here I gave a running total of 25. So if you have 25 things that you want to track, you can go ahead and do so. I also have here on the side, you will see these check boxes on some things. So here, if you put a check mark, say by gas, all of your gas expenses that were used for the month will be highlighted so that you can quickly look to see how many times you went to gas, what place you went to get your gas. You just click on any category and it will highlight based off of what is shown on the tracker. There are also check marks up at the top portion of the template that I forgot to touch on. So if you are a person that likes to track paying their bills as the month progresses, and let's say your electricity bill was on the 3rd and you went ahead and paid that, there's also a checkbox here available for you to do so that you will know this has been done, checked off, it's grayed, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. But getting back down to the bottom portion of the monthly budget template, the last thing that we have over here is the expenses remaining check-in. And this is basically if you are looking at your expense spending, say on a weekly basis or each time you get paid, it will tell you how much you have left to spend. So the only thing that we have here in white, which is something for you to key in, is what I call the rollover column. So this will mean if you have any money from the month before that you want to track and you want to account within your budget, you would enter it here. So let's say, for example, the month prior for gas, we still had $30 remaining. If we add $30 to the rollover balance, that will now feed into our left to spend. So looking at gas for an example, if we started with $30 and for the month we see that we added 150. This 150 is looking at the 150 that we are accounting for gas for the month. And then the left to spend formula is subtracting what we added minus what we spent. So minus this $50 that we spent for the month, leaving us with a total of $130 left to spend for gas. But as for the monthly page, that is really all there is to it. Now we'll go ahead and address the other tabs, and those are fairly straightforward because, as I said, majority of the data does come from these pages, so this is what we want to make sure is correct. So the first tab that I'll go ahead and touch upon is this calendar tab. So the calendar tab is basically a place for you to input all of your bills at a visual level on a calendar so that you can see when you get paid and when your bill is going to come in. You can go ahead and filter this calendar based off of whatever date you want to look at. If you want to change the month to a different one, you can go ahead and hit September. You're going to see that all of your dates will auto-populate for you. And all you would really have to fill in on this page is listing your bill names. So let's say, for example, our bill name is rent. And here you want to write the due day. So just the number corresponding to whatever day the bill falls on. So if rent is due on the 1st, we will see that rent will now pop up within the 1st for the calendar. If you want to go on and say that our internet is due on the 13th, we write 13 and we see that now populates for the 13th. So anything that you would like entered into this calendar, just type it here and it will auto-populate within the calendar for you. Again, if you want to check anything off as the month goes on and say, example, on the 1st you paid off your rent, you would just go ahead and tick this checkbox and then the calendar is going to let you know that this has been paid for. So once you go ahead and enter these for the first time, all you have to do is just change your months and the bills will follow based off of whatever the day changes towards. Since there is only one calendar tab, if you want to make multiple calendars for each month, I would advise just copy and pasting this tab to do so. But if you're fine with just changing your month each time on the calendar view as you get a new month, you can do that as well. So that is really all there is for the calendar. Next, we can go ahead and touch on the savings tracker. So looking at this savings tracker tab, it is fed off of your monthly tab. So if you go to January, anything that you put within this savings category, that is what this savings tab is looking at. So anything that you want to track within the savings tracker, just be mindful to put that category listed here, because if we look here at the drop down, the categories will auto populate based off of what you inputted. So if you want to track your new car, you would write that. If you want to track your house down payment, you can add that. And your emergency fund, you can add that. So you can pick and choose whatever categories from your savings that you want to track. It doesn't have to be all of them. And you can see as a total where you are running towards. So after picking your categories, if there is a goal that you have in mind for your savings, you can put that in as well. So let's say for your house down payment, you have a goal of $10,000 that you would like to save. And for your emergency fund, let's say you have a goal of $5,000. As you input these numbers, you will see that these numbers for remaining to save is going to pop up. And this is basically letting you know how far you are towards your goal based off of what you currently have saved. So if your overall goal right now is showing $15,000 and you have currently $1,720 saved, you still need $13,280 to go. And then if you also are a person that likes to work in terms of percentages, there's a percent column that will populate to let you know how far you are towards that. So those are the main things that you need to fill in for the savings tracker. And then over here, if we look at these boxes that will display, you will see that each of your savings category gets their own box. So for example, if we're looking at just the new car box right here, we can see that our total saved for a new car is sitting at $300. And we see that's all coming from January, which references the $300 that we inputted. These are based off of your actual income. So for these numbers to appear, you do have to close out your budget and put it within the actual column. And that is how this tracker will recognize that. So if we look at these boxes, the only thing that you would have to input is this cell in white, which is the start balance. And this basically represents any money that you've acquired or saved before you bought this template. So say you already have $5,000 saved up for your car fund, you would input that $5,000 so that then now your new total will show your correct total of 5,300 saved. And all of that will auto-populate and update for all of your formulas. So when looking at your savings, just try to be mindful to look at them each at their own box level if you want to see how each one is doing, and then they will all roll up to the total. This graph at the top will be another bar graph that will show your categories based off of who has the highest amount, and then this bar graph will show you by month. So if January is your highest month, it will clearly have the highest bar chart. And then May, if that was a lower month, it will be lower. So in total, for categories that you can track within this savings tracker, it is a total of 20 boxes. So that is how much will be filled in for that. The last thing that you would have to fill out is any instance when you would say take money out of these savings trackers so that you are still keeping up with that. And that is what this savings withdrawal tracker is for. This is basically the same thing as the expense tracker that we have on our monthly tab to track our expenses throughout the month. You would think of this as the same thought process in terms of your savings. So let's say we finally have enough money for our car, and if you want to put the date, let's say on January 15th, we went ahead and purchased our car. We will go ahead and pick the category, and this will be a drop down that will again populate based off of what you enter. And let's say the amount we ended up taking out was $4,000. So now if we look back at our car fund, we see now that the $4,000 has been deducted, and we are now sitting with $1,300 saved up for our new car. And we see that our overall total saved has also been decreased to reflect that withdrawal. So once you set up these categories for your savings tracker for the first time, there really isn't anything for you to input unless you are making a withdrawal, because all of these data points will auto-populate each month as you put something in. So once you fill out your start balance, set them up, put your goals, this tab really just acts as a visual checkpoint to check and make sure that everything is rolling to where it needs to be. All right, so now we can go ahead and get into the annual dashboard. And this tab is, for the most part, fully formula driven. So there's really nothing for you to input. This annual dashboard is meant to show you holistically for the year how you are tracking or where you will end for the year based off of all of the months that you inputted. So since we only filled in for January, we are just going to see January numbers. But up at the top, you will see how much you brought in for the year for income, how much you paid for the year for bills, expenses, savings, investments, and debt. Underneath that, you will once again get some more graphs to visually help you see exactly what is happening. The only graph that we see is not auto-populating is this income source breakdown, and that is because that is based off of whatever you select down here for an income source. So all you have to do is pick the drop down, and this income source is the same income sources that you list by month within your monthly tabs. So as you enter new income sources throughout the year, more will pop up. But if you only have, say, for example, we have Mary and Bill, if this is all you have for the year, then these are the two that you can select. So if you want to track Mary's pay and Bill's pay, all you have to do is hit that, and then you will see that this chart will pop up to tell you how much of that category is accounted towards the total. So here we see that Mary is making more for the family at 53%, and then Bill is making 46%. So this will be helpful if you have multiple income sources and you want to see who is bringing in majority of your income. It will give you a visual of that as well. But looking at the rest of the graphs, we see that we have another bar graph that will give you a budgeted versus actual for the month. And then here we have the cash flow breakdown that's giving you a pie chart based off of our 5 categories for bills, expenses, debt, savings, and investments to tell you what percent is being held for those categories. Down at the bottom, you will see more data that's going to auto-populate. It's more of a percent by month visual to let you know. So if you're interested in example, what month was your biggest month in terms of your income and who brought in the most, this will give you an idea for that. The same concept for bills, expenses, savings, investments, and debt. And then all of that is rolled up into the cash flow overview. It's just putting into perspective your budgeted amount versus your actual and the percent of if you were more than what you expected or less. But once again, all of this is just more data just to give you a visual of everything that you entered, and that will complete all of the tabs that we have available within the budget template. So I hope with this walkthrough, I was able to answer any questions and give you more of an idea of how the template is used. If you have any more things that I probably wasn't clear on, let me know down in the comments and I can try and walk you through it. But as for the explanation and the walkthrough, that is all I have.